days, everybody's into public health. It's obviously a topic of concern. Everybody wants to know about virology and how we can get healthier. So being a healthcare lawyer is very au courant right now. And why is it that we practice healthcare law, and what does this mean to you? Well, for one thing, healthcare law involves a specialty language, so you have to understand the regulatory landscape. It's not just about laws. But more importantly, I want to say that the laws are not something dry. There are things that have really shaped behavior. And the way that I got into this is because I had two professional identities. I was a lawyer on Wall Street, a corporate lawyer. And so I was drafting and reviewing and assisting partners with these huge mega documents on these multi-million-dollar deals, and I was learning the ropes, as a young attorney. Simultaneously, I was enrolled in an interfaith seminary. I was studying the world's religions, I was studying different spiritual paths, and I was expanding my experiential base as well as my knowledge base. And that's what got me interested in healthcare law, because I wanted to know, what is it that makes the whole system tick? How does it come together? How do I map my knowledge as a business lawyer with my passion for health and wellness? After the seminary, I enrolled in a 4-year course of study with a teacher named Barbara Brennan. She wrote a book called Hands of Light, and in that course, I remember the first day we had this exercise. We were to put our hand on the knee of somebody next to us, and we were to energetically sink our hands deep into below the surface of the skin and feel, all the different particles of existence. So, here it is now, we're talking about public health. Years later, I had a faculty appointment at the Harvard School of Public Health and Harvard Medical School. And, there I was, deeply steeped in the science and standing shoulder to shoulder with people in white coats whose job it was to look at analyses and meta-analyses and, to construct and deconstruct and critique the data and figure out what's real from a scientific perspective. And at the same time, I had this experience where I was at the School of Healing, Barbara Brennan School of Healing, and we were sinking our hands into the energetic substructure of a human knee and trying to feel with our subjective senses. And I remember Barbara asked in the room, there were 200 people, how many people are talked to angels regularly? And it was this huge majority of people raised their hands. I didn't raise my hand, I didn't know what to do. But these days I talk to angels, and I had this wonderful conversation with a really important theologian of our times. Actually, he's not known yet, but I'm going to claim that for him. So that's my son, and we were reading a comic book version of the Bhagavad Gita. Whether you're of that faith or a different one, it is acknowledged as one of the great, spiritual works of literature of all time. So I want to expose them to this rich substrate of material. Some people, their mythology is Superman, Batman. That's what I learned when I was a kid. We lived in Argentina, so I used to say Superman and Batman, but I don't know, Spider-Man, but I turned out okay. But I want to expose them to other mythological heroes. So, he sees this picture of Arjuna and Krishna, one of the greatest dialogues in history. And so, Krishna says to Arjuna, and they talk, and they talk, and they talk. It's one of the greatest dialogues in history. He says, Daddy, when are they going to stop talking? Let's get to the action. But another thing that he asked is, how does Krishna turn into a giant? How does that happen? I remember this other story where someone could take something and they would become very large or they would become very small. So I had to explain to him how Krishna suddenly becomes supersized. And then of course he has all these other, lives in his being. But some of my spiritual experiences involved these archetypical memories, if you will, of other dimensions of reality, other times and spaces. Some people say past lives. So, on the one hand, there I was, faculty member at Harvard Medical School, was passionate, publishing a medical journal. On the other hand, spiritual guy, meditating, doing yoga. Now it's become very popular, and accessing my past lives. And got to say, my son asked me tough questions. I don't think they even ask those questions at Harvard. Do you talk to God about your past lives? I don't know. That's where the legal training comes in handy, to give an answer that's satisfying enough, but still acknowledges the mystery and preserves humility, a stance of humility for him. But out of all of this, my interest came in the regulation of medicine and wellness and health in all its dimensions. And right now, whenever this video appears, at the moment it's being filmed, there's a lot of talk about justice and injustice. And my passion for justice, it really comes from this perspective that I got when I was studying at the New Seminary and the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, which is tied to health, which is how do we live as whole human beings, acknowledging all the aspects of ourselves, which, of course, we have shadow sides that we have to integrate. There's a lot of work with trauma and ancestral trauma and generational trauma, cultural trauma, and how do we grow and cultivate compassion in ourselves? How do we have empathy for the suffering of others? And how do we rise to our best selves? And how are we in that battlefield, like Arjuna was in his famous dialogue with Krishna, how do we engage in action while still being mindful of our connection to all realms of reality? I mean, right now, in the political arena, a lot of lies are being told. And I don't know, tens of thousands of lies, I think, by one count. And while this isn't a political message, my experience from the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, and this isn't a commercial for that school, but simply to have a touchstone for my own experience, that the things we do and say ripple out in our aura, in our human energy field, in our bioenergy field, in who we are. And we have energetic connections to people. And I found this a tremendous, tremendous truth. I really worked to incorporate my understanding of this reality while I was on these august faculties, and to try to bridge the scientific and spiritual. And many people have done that, and the law. It's those three. So that's a little bit about me. There's a lot more in my books if you're curious. I'm Michael H. Cohen, founder of Cohen Healthcare Law Group. Recently I saw a post by another healthcare attorney, and they said that a lot of people in healthcare law are mere pretenders. So we're not going to insult anybody, but I claim our ground here and our authenticity, and passionately pursuing that which we care about most, which is the healing and transformation of the world. I recently interviewed a candidate, actually, for my staff. We're not clinicians, but she had a clinical background. It turned out that she'd read one of my books in nursing school. It was called Beyond Complementary Medicine. I believe the subtitle is Legal and Ethical Perspectives on Health and Human Evolution. And that's ultimately our game. That's what we're interested in. So while we help our clients through these micro niche areas of healthcare law, health and wellness law, FDA law, FTC law, things like HIPAA, which are very arcane, FDA rules, which are Byzantine in their own right, corporate practice of medicine, and a kickback law, Stark, fee splitting, liability, standard of care, it goes on and on. We really care about the total health of the human being and how that affects our destiny. It's wonderful to talk to you. We look forward to connecting with you again soon.